Thank you, Jimano Coach, for your warm remarks. We sincerely hope that the Turkish Women's Cultural Association can create more deeper and broader links with Peking University and pave new roads for intellectual and cultural exchange for the two countries. Lastly, let's welcome Professor Du Weiming, Director of the Institute for Advanced Humanistic Studies at Peking University, to deliver his remarks. Professor Du, please.
Honorable Kenan Rifai, Honorable Ambassador Sali, Presidents Wu Zhipan and Li Yansong, distinguished guests and fellow participants of this celebratory event. On behalf of the Institute for Advanced Humanistic Studies at Peking University, I would like to extend a warm welcome to you all, especially those who have traveled for thousands of miles to join us this morning. As a recipient of this precious gift, our Institute is given a rare opportunity to take the initial step to learn from one of the world's great spiritual traditions. We are particularly grateful that the association, among many of its worthwhile projects, as you know, the association is devoted to numerous humanistic projects, has chosen us as one of its beneficiaries. The establishment of the Kenan Rifai Distinguished Professorship in Islamic Studies will enable us to teach our students many subjects of Islam. It will also enable our faculty members to do research on a variety of subjects in the Islamic world that has never been done before in China. We are well aware of the fact that given the limited university resources currently at our disposal, it is impossible to imagine that we can offer a whole field of Islamic studies, which is rich and wide and inspirational. But this reminds me of a Chinese proverb, 细水长流, a tiny stream that will be able to flow long, and hopefully as it flows long, it will gather other streams, so it will become eventually, if not a mighty river, but a very significant presence. With the generous and sustained support of the Turkish Women's Cultural Association, we can be sure that there will always be at least one distinguished Islamic scholar on campus to conduct seminars and to give lectures on a yearly basis, hopefully for decades to come. I'm happy to report that Professor William Chittick, a leading scholar in Islamic philosophy, and Sachiko Murata, a leading scholar in Chinese Muslim thought. Both of them are also on the committee to choose future Islamic scholars come to Beijing. Both will be here with us at least for 3 months in the coming spring of 2012. In the broader context, what we envision here is not an isolated intellectual adventure, but an attempt to create an ethos of an inter-civilizational dialogue at Pekin University. We would like to see the continuous presence of scholars from many major civilizations on campus. Scholars, by definition, are specialists and experts, but they also study their traditions from within. Often, they are not only outside observers of their tradition, but inside participants of their tradition as well. In short, an essential part of many scholars is to learn from their tradition from within. Their aspiration is to make a continuous effort to embody their traditions in their everyday life. However, it is vitally important to note that at Murata University, religious advocacy is unallowable. It is inappropriate for scholars as university professors to assume roles of missionaries or preachers. Scholars of particular religious persuasion are encouraged to share their visions, convictions, and insights, but they must exercise utmost care to avoid what we call conversion in their academic work. As many scholars have pointed out, the shareability of cumulative wisdom is a distinctive feature of religious studies broadly defined. Yet the benefit of Islam, together with many other spiritual traditions, such as Hindu, Judean, Christian, Confucian, Taoist, Buddhist. Among them, exchange of ideas on an open and public forum is immeasurably valuable to all members of the university community. Liberal arts education is for the purpose of character building, the total person, development of total person. And liberal arts education can be greatly enhanced by learning from the cumulative wisdom of great sages and worthies. As many of you know, the Prophet mentioned there are thousands of prophets before. And even some scholars mentioned in Malaysia that Confucius probably was one of the great prophets. We hope that the Kenan Rifai Distinguished Professorship will set a standard for imparting Islamic, especially Sufi insight, as an inspiration for dialogue among civilizations. The incredible speed in the development of science and technology, in particular information and communication technologies, has enabled human beings to interact among themselves in an intensity and frequency never imagined possible before in human history. The explosion of data and information may give the wrong impression that we are so knowledgeable about everything under the sun that there is little we need to learn from the past. This is an unfortunate and dangerous misconception. We must not confuse knowledge with wisdom. Human beings are now confronted with many grave challenges, including the survival of human species. Knowledge can help us to deal with many different problems and difficult problems, but it has to be guided by wisdom if we want to learn how to live in peace, and not only among themselves, but also with nature, with the cosmos as a whole. I would like to share a personal experience. My first opportunity in the Islamic Confucian dialogue took place in 2003 with Hussein Nasser, included Professor Chittick and Professor Murata in Massachusetts at Harvard. This was followed by a major convocation involving more than 1,000 people, again focusing on Islamic Confucian dialogue in Malaysia in 2004. Since then, I've taken part in similar dialogues with Chinese Muslim communities in Nanjing, in Yinchuan, and in Kunming. I have also worked with Professor Murata and Chittick on major Muslim thinkers in China, such as Wang Daiyu and Liu Zhi. The greatest lesson I learned from my limited exposure to Islam is self-knowledge. Islam has greatly broadened my intellectual horizon and deepened my appreciation of my own culture. It has taught me that real dialogue begins with humility and the spirit of reciprocity. Do not do to others what you would not want others to do to you. With reciprocity, we recognize the other's existence as real as our own. My respect for my dialogical partners arises from my awareness that there's so much I can learn from communication with them. It is an opportunity for mutual reference and mutual learning. I'm very glad to hear from the ambassador there's an alliance, a great alliance, actually initiated by Turkey and Spain in connection with the Dialogue Among Civilizations in 2001. I was fortunate to have taken part in that conversation. So the vision of the alliance is to develop a broad framework that all conscientious and reflective public intellectuals, those people in business, in mass media, in all kinds of civic organizations, like the Turkish Women's Culture Association, and also in the academic community. These public intellectuals are those who are politically concerned, socially engaged, and culturally sensitive. And they are not from the government alone, they're from all walks of life, that are willing to gather together and to raise consciousness and to spread the cultural peace. And this, to me, is an incredibly important opportunity. Just 2 days ago, under the sponsorship of the Beijing Forum, we organized here a dialogue on core values between China and the United States. Our vision there is not simply the bilateral relationship between China and the United States. We wish at Pekin University to begin a dialogue with Islam and dialogue with India as basis for our communication with Europe, with the United States. We hope the three great teachings in China, Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism, together with the great civilizations we call axial civilizations in the world, Judaism, ancient Greece, India, China, Christianity, Muslim, Islamic traditions, all these traditions will be able to come to terms not simply to find an artificial harmonious relationship, to argue, to debate, to confront, but in a peaceful environment. So a university like Peking University will be a place where some of these great traditions will interact among themselves. And I'm absolutely confident that some of the great wisdom in Islam, especially on the Sufi tradition, I learned from Professor Nasser and many other professors, can serve as an important reference, an important source of inspiration for these kinds of interactions. The Turkish Women's Cultural Association, under the leadership of Cimano Hokan, has given us a rare gift and also a rare opportunity. It will help us to cultivate the art of listening. If we listen well and listen deeply to the wisdom of ancient sages, the quality of the mind at Peking University will be immeasurably enriched. We are particularly grateful because we know the association is not an association of power, of influence, of incredible extension of wealth. The association is noted for its committed effort for philanthropical work. Therefore, I think, as our president pointed out, we are deeply concerned about the tragedy, October 23rd, and we show our condolences to all the victims of the terrible earthquake. And under this particular context, the association is still willing to come here and to help us. I think the time is right for us at Peking University to join this enterprise, and hopefully will allow this tiny stream to flow much larger. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Du, for your speech. Just like Professor Du said, that today's ceremony is not an isolated event, but an event of a series of actions. By listening to the wisdom of past sagas, we promote a dialogue of civilization that can open our perspectives and together conquer our future. Lastly, we sincerely appreciate the honorable guests attending today's event. And it concludes the opening session. And now we will have a break. And we would like all the guests to move outside the building. And we will have a group photo there. And at 11, we will have the keynote speech given by Professor Chittick. So thank you very much, guests. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you.